Hey everybody, this is Peter from Third Coast Percussion. Can't tell you enough how excited we are for this opportunity to play this piece of music with you all. We wanted to create a simple tutorial video. This video doesn't have all the information, but it should have all the basic info that you need to both make it through the piece as well as be able to play and interpret the music with the rest of the ensemble.
Okay, so this is the score to NC. This score is in concert pitch. That said, if you play a transposing instrument, there are versions of the score transposed, and those versions are also available on this blog site. Also, with every single one of these scores that's available, there are also performance directions included, and these performance directions are directly from Terry Riley. So please do read through those directions, as well as all the other information that we're providing through this video and on our blog and elsewhere. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to just talk about some basic ideas of the piece and even some more detailed ideas about how our performance is going to go through this piece. So we're just going to walk through it, and let's get started here. So the tempo of our performance is going to be about quarter note equals 108 BPM, and the piece is going to start with just the glockenspiel. One of the Third Coast Percussion members will be playing the glockenspiel, and they are going to be playing in concert C pitch, and they are going to be playing that pitch in eighth notes, which means that they will be establishing both the tempo and the grid for this performance. So the first part of the performance is just 5 to 10 seconds of solo glockenspiel that we can all listen to. And then we're going to begin entering in with this first musical pattern. Now, when we enter in, we're not going to enter in exactly together. It should be a staggered entrance, and so after that first 5 to 10 seconds of glockenspiel, we'll begin entering in, and after about 20 seconds of these sort of staggered entrances, the entire ensemble should be playing, and they should be playing this very first musical pattern. A couple other sort of details on this notation and on the patterns themselves. So again, if you play a transposing instrument, there are transposing scores that are available to you. You can feel free to play these musical figures in whatever register on your instrument you feel to be the most appropriate. Okay, so and you can also feel free to jump around from register to register on your instrument if you feel that that's appropriate musically within the performance of this piece. Also, while we all need to be playing with the glockenspiel in that eighth note grid of the glockenspiel, where you interpret the downbeat will vary from player to player. So you also notice that each of these musical patterns has various lengths, and that's something in the music that kind of forces or dictates these differences between where the patterns begin from player to player, and that's something that's just really cool and really unique within the piece. So make sure that you're playing with the grid of the glockenspiel, but you do not need to be playing in direct unison, obviously, with your fellow bandmates. So we will all be starting at number 1, and we will be starting from the top left and going down to the bottom right, going from pattern to pattern to pattern. We're never skipping any patterns. We're always just going chronologically here through the musical material. We are shooting for a performance length of about an hour, so about 60 minutes for this performance. And if you do just some simple math, that means that we have about a minute of time to play each one of these musical patterns. So before you move on to the next musical pattern, you should have performed the one that you're on for about a minute, and it may be more, it may be a little bit less. We need to be moving through this material in somewhat the same pace, but it should not be directly in unison. The rule with this piece is that an individual player should never be either ahead or behind of the rest of the ensemble by any more than 2 or 3 of these musical patterns. So another way to describe that is, let's say that you're cruising along and you're playing pattern number 13 right here. That means that as you listen across to the rest of the ensemble members should either be on 13 or they should be on 11, 12, or 14 and 15, and you shouldn't be further away from the rest of the ensemble than that. If you find that you are, cruising along, loving life, and you're playing pattern number 32, you listen across to the rest of the ensemble, and you notice that the rest of the group seems to be hovering around musical patterns 8, 9, and 10. That means that you've just cycled through the patterns too quickly. And if that is the case, you should begin to fade out and stop, and then wait for the rest of the ensemble to get up to the point where you're at. And when they reach you, you can enter in again and play out to the end of the piece. And similarly, if you find that you're hovering around on pattern number 11, and you listen across to the rest of the ensemble, and you realize that most of the rest of the ensemble is at number 36 or number 37. And if you find that to be the case, just stop what you're doing and jump immediately up to where the general area of the rest of the ensemble is. So we do need to be moving along at a general pace together. So, and again, if you just kind of use about a minute or 60 seconds per pattern as a good rule of thumb, then that shouldn't be an issue. So as you move through these patterns, eventually we will get to number 53. And once everybody has arrived at pattern number 53, we are going to begin a really long crescendo and diminuendo, and it's going to be a really long, massive unison crescendo and diminuendo, kind of a final peak of the piece. And just again, listen across to your fellow bandmates for when that happens. When we get to the end of that really massive crescendo and diminuendo, the entire ensemble is going to be gradually fading out one at a time. So again, staggered fade outs. Just like how we had staggered entrances in the beginning, we will have staggered exits at the very end. And just like the very beginning of the piece, the last instrument to be playing will be the glockenspiel, pulsing along on those eighth note Cs. Okay, so the piece will end as it begins, and that's that. And again, we're shooting for about an hour's total duration. So I just wanted to talk about a few other just sort of like musical ideas. We want to keep with the spirit of the piece, so we don't really want to dictate too much about just overall dynamics or how we're moving through this piece. We wanted to leave it open to the performers themselves and to react and respond to the performers around them. And that really is the key to the best performances of this piece, using the rule of listen first and play second. And so let me just talk about just a couple of topics that generally come up in this piece. I mentioned before that the downbeats, or where the beginning of your musical pattern, will most often be different than the performers around you, and that's a really good thing. There are other sort of topics to talk about in terms of just how to interpret each one of these different musical patterns. Obviously, the composer doesn't give us anything except for the notes and the rhythm of the musical patterns. So you should feel free to interpret these musical figures with any type of articulation or dynamic inflection that you feel is musically appropriate. That being said, again, the trick to a really amazing performance of this piece is keeping your ears open. So as you're playing a musical figure, listen around to your fellow bandmates, and if you hear somebody phrasing a musical figure in a certain way, try to imitate them. And by doing this, it'll give us sort of this unified sound within the ensemble. And the other cool thing that is happening here with this music is that since we're playing the same musical material, but it's not necessarily beginning at exactly the same time, there's a variety of different canons that are going on throughout the ensemble, and that's a really important element to the music. And if you are trying to match the phrasing of your fellow bandmates, that's just going to serve to highlight those canons even more, because there's this sort of unified sound and unified interpretation of this musical material. So in terms of other large-scale dynamics, again, use your ears. There's nothing to say that you need to play any of these musical patterns really loudly or really quietly. But if you listen across and you hear a bunch of your bandmates starting to crescendo through some figures, follow along with them. Or if you hear them starting to get quieter on the material that they're playing, again, do that as well. And opening our ears up will help just us realize, just a much more sort of unified performance of this piece. Other things that may be a little bit more instrument specific, if you're a percussionist or maybe a pianist, you can start from the top left right here and just work your way all the way down and play for an hour total, and that's great. If you are playing an instrument that requires you to breathe, or I guess requires some sort of airflow, you most likely do not have the ability to play from the very beginning to end without stopping. And that is totally fine. At any point in this piece, when you feel like you need to breathe, then you should absolutely breathe, okay? Similarly, actually, though, if you play an instrument that doesn't require any airflow, that doesn't mean that you should just play constantly from beginning to end of this piece. Actually taking some time off and adding some space in your own independent voice is actually a very good thing. One of the other really cool musical things that emerges within performances of this piece of music is the changes in texture, and oftentimes the changes in texture has to do with how many instruments are playing when and how loudly that they might be playing. So by dropping out for a couple of minutes and just listening around and waiting to come back in, you're actually creating changes in these textures that can be really compelling in a really awesome performance of this piece. So I think that's about it for right now. I've rambled on for long enough. I guess the last thing that I will say is that we're all in this together, and you may be a musician who this could be your third in-C performance of the past 24 hours, or you could be a musician who has never played this piece before at all, So interact with one another, and if you are a seasoned player and you know this piece really well, listen around, and if anybody else that in our ensemble that you hear might be a little bit lost or having a little bit of problems with some of the musical material, help them out, and that would be great. So we have a lot of people playing on this concert. It's going to be a really amazing performance. I can't tell you how excited we are to perform this piece with you all. It's going to be an amazing performance in one of the most amazing venues, not only in Chicago but the rest of the world. This is going to be really, really stellar. Please do use all the materials that are available to you, on our blog and elsewhere, and don't be afraid to contact any of us at Third Coast Percussion at any time for any information at all about this project. Thank you so much. Can't wait to play with you.